Muqtada al Sadr's lawmakers are replaced by some of his biggest rivals. The Iraqi Parliament swears in dozens of new MPs. Will this break the country's political deadlock or create further chaos and instability? I'm Andrea Sankey, and today's newsmaker is Iraq's new lawmakers. When Muqtada al Sadr ordered his 73 lawmakers to resign en masse, it was a huge political gamble. The controversial cleric's party went from having the most seats in parliament to having none for the first time in more than 15 years. And what makes his decision even more surprising is that his lawmakers were replaced by his biggest rivals. The coordination framework is an alliance mostly made up of Iran-backed Shia parties. And this is the moment they became the largest bloc in parliament.
I swear by Almighty God that I will perform my legal duties and responsibilities with dedication and sincerity, and to preserve the independence and sovereignty of Iraq, and to look after the interests of the people, and to ensure the safety of its lands, its skies, and its waters, and its wealth, and its federal democratic system, and to work to preserve the public and private liberties and the independence of the judiciary, and adhere to the implementation of legislation honestly and impartially, and God be my witness to what I say.
So how does the Iraqi parliament look now that Sadr's loyalists are gone? Well, the Iran-aligned Fatah alliance, led by former paramilitary leader Hadi al-Amiri, gained 12 seats and now has 29. Former Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki's State of Law coalition has 37 seats with 4 newly sworn-in lawmakers. Ala al-Rikabi's Imtidad party, which was formed after the 2019 Tishrin movement, got 7 more seats and now has 16 representatives in parliament. The Victory Alliance, headed by Shia politicians Ammar al-Hakim and Hyder al-Abadi, has almost tripled its seats with 7 new MPs. And Kataib Hezbollah member Hossein Moanis Hukuk movement picked up 5 seats. But even with the highest number of seats, forming a new government will be tough. Previous attempts have fallen short. Muqtada al Sadr tried for months and failed. But can this new alliance finally break the deadlock? 165 is the magic number needed for an overall majority. The coalition framework is still well short of that. And if Iraq is forced to hold yet another round at the ballot box, it still may not break the political impasse. Muqtada al Sadr may not have representation in parliament right now, but make no mistake, on the streets of Iraq, his supporters are there.
Al Sadr left the matter in the hands of Iraqi people. This means that the demonstration can return to the streets, and thus the Iraqi people will be the main controller of the parliament or the next government.
So is there a political strategy in all of this, and where do Iraq's government and Iraqis themselves go from here? Well, joining me now to debate that from Baghdad is Ali al-Dabbagh. He is a diplomat and former Iraqi government spokesperson. And from Basra, Dhiaa al Asadi, a former political representative of Muqtada al Sadr. Thanks all so much for being with us. Dhiaa, I'll begin with you. Muqtada al Sadr must have seen this coming. So tell us, what was his strategy here? Why resign to allow your own rivals to take power?
Thank you for having me. Well, it was not a surprise. The decision that was taken by Sayyid Muqtada al Sadr was hinted at repeatedly by several statements released immediately after the Sadr's bloc won 73 seats in the recent elections. In the statements, we've seen that there is insistence on the formation of the government on the basis of a national majority government. Otherwise, he also indicated that he will go to the opposition. And if the opposition is not going to work, then he will leave the process entirely. So this was not a surprise. This has been planned. This has been studied very well. And it has been decisive at the same time. The decision of forming a national majority government was the only solution for the persisting problems, for the chronic problems of the political process. We all know that it has been based on principles that are not working anymore. These principles should have been changed, and somebody should have been taking the initiative. Sayyid Muqtada al Sadr has undertaken this campaign, this project of trying to amend the political process, not necessarily eradicating it or dramatically changing the whole process, but he started actually practically in 2010 and even before.
Okay.
To call.
But Dhiaa, I have to ask you, I mean, if you're saying that it is not working, the Iraqi government is effectively not working, what are you talking about specifically? The idea of having to form, the principle of having to form a majority government in order to govern the country? Is that what you feel needs to change?
Yeah, I think this scenario of having a majority government has not been tried. And if we talk about a process of trial and errors, almost all shapes of government, inclusive government, consensus government, all these kinds of governments have been tried and proved dysfunctional. The prime ministers, the government officials could not deliver what is expected from them.
Okay. Still, though, this is what the Iraqi constitution provides for. So is it politically savvy for Muqtada al Sadr to resign and hand over his own seats to the very people he wanted to keep out of power? Doesn't that just backfire entirely?
We shouldn't forget that Sayyid Muqtada al Sadr is not, I mean, in the first place, he is not a politician. He is a religious and a social leader, but he had to put his hand, he had to participate in the political process to defend and to deliver and to represent the people, those who follow him and the Iraqi people in general, because he considers himself as a national leader. So he tried his best to make the process, I mean, the political process as representative and as functional as possible. But when he discovered that there is no hope, and the only way to reform this process, the only way to reform the government is to change the principles upon which it was.
I mean, it's interesting you say he's not a politician, but he's been working in politics for upwards of 2 decades now. And people have complained that, you know, he wants to have it both ways. He wants to say, no, I'm not a politician, but here he is maneuvering constantly from within the government and taking office, but at the same time trying to say, no, he's not a politician. I'm a religious man and I represent my following, my constituents on a more moral basis, even though his opponents will complain you're actually part of the political problem.
Well, it depends on what we understand by politics. Politics is everywhere. Politics is a process that is integrated in all activities, whether these activities are social or governmental or non-governmental. And because he is, as I said, he's basically a religious and social leader. So these actions, I mean, the social and religious actions are related in one way or another to the political life. So he's not a political leader. When I say he's not a political leader, he's not standing for any office or for any position in the political process, but he leads a very wide range and very vast range of people who are consider themselves as followers, as people who adhere to the Sadrist school, to the school of his father, to the school of his cousin, and to his school now that is being engaged in socio-political activity.
Okay, I'm just being told, finally, we have Ali al-Dabbagh back online from Baghdad. I wasn't obviously avoiding you, Ali. We couldn't re-erect your line, unfortunately, until now. Hopefully you can hear us now, and hopefully you did get to hear some of what Dhiaa was saying, because you have said that this whole thing is not about new parliamentarians. It's about Muqtada al Sadr's maneuvering to create turbulence. How so?
Thank you very much. The ability of uprising the street and it's shown that Muqtada al Sadr got such power and got such ability to make any sort of turbulence, any make of civil strife in the street. And I don't think that the framework could, could have an easy job and could have an easy mission that to do it. It is very unlikely that they could succeed Muqtada al Sadr will not allow them. They are their adversaries, and he wants to keep them out of power. So it is his, I think it's his goal going to be not to allow them to succeed. Second issue, I think it is also connected with the regional arrangement, what is going on in Doha. And this should be read and in this context. Any positive or any negative things coming from Doha, it definitely influenced on the situation of the framework ability to continue and to have a successful cabinet. This is the third issue. We should understand that
Actually, before you move on to the third issue, give us an example of how you think what is happening in Doha is going to directly affect Baghdad.
You know, there is a friction between Iranians, a pro-Iranians group, and the United States presence in Iraq. And this reflected, and this has been as, being named for the framework and their alliance and their groups. And that is there is an objection on the framework regionally and might be from United States also. And anything comes positive with the Iranian, I think it will reduce that friction in Iraq and could make the things, pave the way that it could be easier for the framework to go ahead. I think this will be enough. For the third issue, Sadr's movement is not as a normal political group or political party. It is a one-man decision making. And Muqtada al Sadr, when he decided not to allow the Shia component to join him, and especially it's not all, but his objection on Maliki and some other groups, which is as competing with him on the Sadrist name. And this should be read in this context. It is not a normal dialogue going on among the Sadrists to make a decision and to come out to make a decision in the political situation in Iraq. It is totally, it's Muqtada al Sadr, his own decision.
Okay. Dhiaa is also saying, Ali, that the institution of a majority coalition government is actually what's failing Iraq, not Muqtada al Sadr. Do you agree with that to any extent? Is it the structure of the government itself that holds the country back?
The majority government, it has been twisted in a way that although that the Sadrists have an objection of some of the Sunni components, which they treat them as their enemies. But then again, they came in, and they become an alliance, and the same applicable on the Kurd. Some of the Kurd element, Sadrists, they were objection on them. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to others, it got no problem in the majority government. But in the other adversary, in the Shia component, it becomes at the end the majority government. It is a political formula which understood in this way. But again, I think it's related to a competition on the Shia bloc and the Shia group,
okay.
and this is.
So, okay, I think we have your sound. But Ali, I mean, I want to move it forward, though, because now we have the coordination framework taking up the seats. Will they be able to now actually form an alliance with Sunnis and Kurds who tend not to trust them? Or are we seeing another failure to form a majority government in the very near future and Iraq having to go back to the polls?
The framework would be in the weakest situation now, because they have to agree with all conditions which has been imposed by the Sunni groups and by the Kurds, and it is not as easy. I think it will be very difficult for them to accept all what the Sunnis need and what the Kurd needs. And I think this is a very critical situation for them, and it might be a failure for them with the people, with the Shia people, because at the end, the only way to succeed and to form the government, they have to accept all such conditions, which is, of course, I mean, the Kurds, the oil law, it is very unlikely that the people in Iraq and Baghdad, they will accept it, but it is one of the conditions of the court that they have to delete and cancel what the federal government, the federal court, what had agreed, which again, it is one of the things. Second things that the Sunnis also impose some of the conditions which even Sadrist didn't accept, but now because the framework, they are alone, and definitely they are going to be in a very difficult situation, in the weakest situation, to agree and to accept or not to accept, and they fail.
Okay. I mean, do you think Iraq is simply headed toward another election? And I'd also like you to comment on what Ali was saying about how many eyes are actually on what is happening in Doha right now and how that could manifest in Iraq.
Well, I think one of the reasons why Sayyid Muqtada al Sadr is trying his best to change the, I would call them still the principles upon which the political process has been based, is to disentangle or dissociate what is happening in Iraq from what is happening in the region or worldwide. Although this seems really a very hard task, it is sometimes it might seem impossible to disentangle Iraq from its regional and international relations. But Sayyid Muqtada al Sadr was insisting that the government of Iraq should be built on national bases. It should not be polarized by any regional player or any regional power. And regardless of the situation in the region and the world, we have to take care of our own interests, national interests. And these national interests could only be achieved if the main players in Iraq decide that their government should not be under the control or should not be influenced by a regional or international power. And that's why the campaign, the project that has been started by Sayyid Muqtada al Sadr looks at the formation of an Iraqi government by Iraqi people, regardless of their backgrounds, regardless of what communities they come from. And this is the very reason, the main reason he accepted a national government that is composed of Shia, Sunni, and Kurds. While on the other side, the coordinative framework, they insist that Shia could come to power as one community, and the position of the premiership or the prime minister should be decided by the Shia as one bloc. And by this way, we are actually deepening the sectarian division. The very point that Sayyid Muqtada al Sadr wanted to eradicate from the whole process. He said that when the Americans occupied Iraq, when they changed the regime, although this is not written in the constitution, although this is not a law, it is not legally recognized, but it has become as a convention, as an agreement between different partners that the authorities, the main authorities, should be divided along sectarian and ethnic lines. And this is the danger. If we continue like this, it means we are not going to depart from this division, and Iraq will be divided along these lines. What Sayyid Muqtada al Sadr is calling for is a government that is based on professionalism, based on qualifications, based on integrity, anything other than the ethnic or religious or whatever backgrounds. And these secondary identity or secondary issues should not be of a prime concern, should not be of prime importance.
Let me ask Ali then. I mean, that sounds beautifully idealistic, what Dhiaa is describing. Why can't it be that way? Why shouldn't Iraq strive toward what he says Muqtada al Sadr's real vision actually is for Iraq, in a less sectarian country, one that is not as easily influenced and manipulated by outside forces as Iraq currently is?
Is it to me? Is the question to me?
Yes.
Yeah, it is a rosy formulas, definitely. And all Iraqis, they would like to have that Iraq been not influenced by the neighbor and as well as the other remote forces. But there are facts. Iraq is very weak. Iraq is a fragile situation. And all the components of the Iraqis, they are connected in a way or other with some of the regional forces. We cannot close our eye, and we should be realistic. Iraq is not, it's in intensive care right now. And it is a situation, not healthy situation. So for sure that when the country becomes such a condition, there will be definitely the smallest power in the region will be influence Iraqis. And this is not this is including all the components, the Kurd, the Shia, the Sunnis, the Arab, the Turkmen, all the people is being influenced by the regional, because the situation is very fragile. And in order to move that, this one is not only just related to the Shia. The Sunnis is being grouped, although there was huge differences between them. It's been grouped and then become one unity because of the regional, some of the regional power, regional countries being influenced to make them united and become as one bloc. The same is applicable on the other components.
Okay.
So for sure that we would like, and this is the aim of all the politicians, that to come out of the influence of Iran, of the Saudis, of the United States, of all the regional power.
Understood. It is a common goal, ultimately. But I'll tell you what, we're down to our last few minutes, and I want to ask you a question both as just Iraqis. Iraq has mostly been in the global press lately because of really record-breaking heat, victim of climate change. Summer has barely even started. Iraqis were already facing power cuts and a lack of basic services or issues around food security. I really shudder to think what might happen in July and August to come and how much more instability Iraq might see. Dhiaa, I'll let you begin. What are your primary concerns going forward right now for the Iraqi people?
Well, in addition to the security concerns, because without security, nothing can be started. I mean, development is very much related to stability and security. There are so many economic challenges. There are so many political challenges. And I think the formation of the government is one of the biggest challenges now. The other parties, the coordinative framework, I think it is not easy for them to form a government that will be endorsed or accepted by not just the parliament, but by people in the street. And I think if they are not going to make a departure from the established norms or a paradigm shift in the whole process, they will not be convincing. The government that they will form, no matter what shape of government, it will not be different from the previous governments. And the failures will be reiterated, and the same problems will be reiterated. So this is not going to be accepted by people who have already broken into the streets several times, asking for basic services, but also asking for a future, and they don't know what their future might be. With such failure, with such failure of governments.
Ali, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the only thing the coming government could do, not to allow the collapse of the country. This could be a good things and positive things they could achieve. We cannot ask them more because they've been proved that they are also not efficient and they are not qualified to build anything out of what Dhiaa said. They cannot fix the services, they cannot fix the security, because totally they are inefficient. Or I don't exclude any one of them. It's all the framework. They prove that they are inefficient to handle and to give and to fix all the problems of the Iraq. The only thing, if they could not allow the collapse of the country, I think they will do well.
Do you think they can do that, though? I mean, this is the problem right now. Another coalition government, majority government has to be formed. Many are skeptical that it can be done in the amount of time necessary, and especially before a crippling summer season hits with more power cuts and the lack of basic services and the issues around food security facing Iraqis.
I think if political groups they decide not to get their country collapsed, if the regional situation being improved, yes, it's possible.
Okay. Dabbagh, I will have to give you the final word, and I'd like to thank as well Dhiaa al Asadi. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us there from Iraq. Greatly appreciated. And we'll be discussing this, I'm sure, in the near future again here on the Newsmakers. In the meantime, remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Andrea Sankey. We'll see you next time.